this established way of thinking is very large now. So the world has shifted away from Gandhi in a sense, in a big way. India has shifted away from Gandhi, and I think the decisive moment in Indian history was the debates, struggles and arguments between Nehru and Gandhi, in which Nehru prevailed, because Gandhi,
Nehru being the first Prime Minister
Prime Minister of India, Gandhi's prodigy, Gandhi loved him, wanted to nurture him as a successor, but Nehru failed Gandhi's vision, because he went into centralized government, 5-year plan, Soviet style socialism, large scale steel plants, away from Gandhi's idea of panchayat, which is the village governance, and decentralized, and did not develop the villages. We still don't have education in the villages, roads in the villages, electricity in the villages. It's a highly urban monstrosity that is being created, automobile industry driven economy, rather than bringing water to the villages, which would be the Gandhi alternative. Gandhi alternative would be, rather than the highway for cars and a huge infrastructure for cars, let's have highways and distribution of water, so that the poor farmers can be thriving, and we can have a huge 5-fold increase in agricultural output. So there is a huge amount of nutrients that people are able to have, and that would be a decentralized, self-sufficient village economy.
So the another issue that everybody talks about, whether Gandhi is probably irrelevant or relevant maybe, is terrorism. There is a terrorism, global terrorism, whole network of terrorist activities which this country obviously has suffered, and India has suffered. So what do you think Gandhi's relevance is to terrorism?
It's a very hard question, because Gandhi did not, if you look at how Gandhi resolved the problems that he faced, this is not a problem, a domestic terrorism kind of problem that he worked on, because there was the opponent was headquartered in London, so he was unifying Indians to get rid of that problem. It's anybody's guess what Gandhi would be doing today, facing a problem which is homegrown terrorism also in India. My feeling is that Gandhi was out of the box thinker, and he would appreciate the damage being done by this sort of thing, and consider that to be just as much an enemy as a foreign kind of an enemy. And rather than sort of being very complacent about it, or saying, well, the right thing is to accept it and acknowledge it and tolerate it, he was not, I don't think he was tolerant of those who were adharmic. He was a fighter of adharma. So terrorism should be adharma, it should be considered adharma, and the Gandhian thing would not be to sort of accept it, because we have to accept everything, but to disown it and to fight it. So the tricky question comes, how would he fight it? Would he go to violence? He did on occasion say that if non-violence fails in facing adharmic forces, then we must be willing to fight them. He did say that.
So he may consider in enacting laws that we are doing as we are doing in the United States or rest of the world, or increasing the police force, increasing surveillance, which is what we are doing, versus he might think out of box and he go to people.
He might go to people, but the question is, see, the going to the people against the British was worked, because if Indians stopped supporting the British, he concluded the British Empire would come down. So the whole idea of spinning the wheel is stop buying the made in Manchester cloth and buy local. And there is 30% unemployment in Manchester created by his movement to weave the cloth, everybody weaving the cloth. So he understood that these institutions of commerce are funding the empire. So if we make our own salt and don't pay salt tax, even if we have to get arrested, and if we make our own cloth and don't buy British cloth, so if we boycott their industry which supports them financially and gives them all this power, and do it in our be self-sufficient in our own decentralized production, we can bring them down. He did that. He also he also then got people power, got all the people sort of unified around him. So if a Gandhi today could bring Indian Muslims and Hindus together in a way that says that Indian Muslims will now oppose and fight the Islamic terrorism, that it is more important to have a healthy, harmonious, congenial society, because if you allow the terrorists to have it their way, then the Muslims will suffer as well,
Yeah.
and they will suffer the most probably, because their religion will be taken apart. So if he were to be able to convince the majority of Indian Muslims to actually get organized and fight, rather than sort of being that we are not part of the terrorism, but we are not fighting it either, rather than being disinterested and staying out of it, becoming the ones who are really at the vanguard of fighting Islamic terrorism, that would deny the Islamic terrorists a support base.
Yeah, and but Gandhi failed in a way, because India did get partitioned.
Yes.
On the line of Hindus and Muslims.
Right.
I mean, Hindus plus Muslims versus Muslims who didn't want to be part of India.
Well, there also there is another factor, that Jinnah and Nehru were fighting to be Prime Minister, and Jinnah did not ask for partition if he could have gotten the Prime Ministership. So there could have been a unified India with Jinnah as the first Prime Minister, and there was no Pakistan desire on his part. He was just looking for a nice job for himself. And Gandhi, his favorite son was Nehru. He could not disappoint Nehru. So some people even argue that the Nehru's ego is what partitioned India, because then Jinnah had to then start mobilizing this whole Islam kind of thing as a way to break up the country.
And so Pakistan is now we have a reality, and it seems like this is the question actually is getting around Pakistan, as to that's the center of, if not all, most of the terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda. And while maybe Gandhi may have dealt with that or may not have, God knows, but what you think the Obama administration or US or India or any other country should do to try to look into this issue, whether from Gandhian point of view or any other point of view, and what you think that that opens doors for United States and India in terms of their relations?
You know, I mean, I feel that when we talk about human rights, the tendency is to focus on certain politicized people, and we ignore some people. So, for example, if you look at the people in Balochistan, I mean, Balochistan was not part of Pakistan.
So right now Balochistan is part of Pakistan.
And it became a part of Pakistan about a decade after independence and after Pakistan was created. So it was for thousands of years its own nation, had its own rulers. British accepted that also. So it merged into Pakistan, but they are not happy. They don't have their rights, and they want to separate. And the human rights of Baluchis are not being considered on the world stage by human rights activists, and you know, because they're also very politicized, who funds them and who sponsors them and so on and so forth. So the human rights activists have sort of avoided raising the Baluchi rights issue. But a Baluchi independence would create a whole different geographical structure and give Afghanistan access to the ocean. They will not be landlocked anymore. They'll neither need Iran nor Pakistan for access to the ocean. They'll have Balochistan, which would be a friendly country for them. So I think that there are some creative possibilities that need to be discussed and put on the table. And right now people are afraid to even talk about this.
And this is, you're talking about, and this might contain are the Baluchis also target of terrorism?
The Baluchis are not, the Baluchis feel that they are being used.